content creation sucks. Well, at least it kinda sucks, right? Even some of the biggest names in streaming complain about burnout, or eventually find that playing games or making videos, something that at one point was a burning passion, makes them feel bored, or simply feels like work. If this is the case though, why do like a quarter of all of the kids in the entire world want to be a YouTuber, a streamer, or influencer of some kind? Well, the upside is obvious. You get to play video games at your desk all day, make a truckload of money, and you don't have to go to college. Once upon a time, I was one of those kids. And in a way, I still am. I made videos and posted them on this platform expecting to blow up and become a star. Obviously, my current subscriber count of a whopping 60 begs to differ there. Seriously though, I was terrible. I recorded my videos on a Dell laptop that I dropped dozens of times, and probably had just as many viruses as that. I recorded a channel update video basically once per week, informing my extremely excited audience of no more than 20 people of a new channel editor, or one of the many name changes that I would make throughout the process. The actual content I made was funny, but funny in a sad way. I couldn't edit or record to save my life, and the footage was so choppy that it would have worked better as a PowerPoint presentation. I eventually quit and deleted all of my videos for a variety of reasons, but the main one was that I was not only embarrassed by my work, I hated that even though I was embarrassed, my videos were severely underperforming my expectations that were somehow high despite knowing their low level of quality. Channel infographics were depressing, and everything felt like so much work for no payoff whatsoever. So I guess a more appropriate statement than content creation sucks was I suck at content creation. You, the viewer, may be asking, well, why on earth am I watching this video and where is it going? Well, the whole point of that intro was to relate something I tried for a long time and eventually gave up on to something with a similar story. Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy is a game that sucks, or rather, a game that I suck at. It's been out for years, I've owned it for years, and though I've always wanted to beat it, I was never good enough or tried hard enough to do so. I thought it would be appropriate for my official return to the YouTube and streaming space to be accompanied by a video game conquering a similar mountain, and in truly attempting to complete the game through blood, sweat, and tears, revive my aspirations to become a content creator along with it. Thank you for joining me in this adventure, and I hope you enjoy the video. Day 1 began on March 29th, 2023. As I said previously, I had attempted Getting Over It before, and multiple times at that. According to Steam, I played 6.7 hours before my decision to sit down and actually finish it. Getting Over It is a unique game though. Instead of making progress through checkpoints or through saving, every mistake you make can bring you back closer and closer to the beginning. There is no loophole to run away from your errors, and as Bennett Foddy states at the start of the game, I'll understand if you have to take a break at any point. Just find a safe place to stop and quit the game. Don't worry, I'll save your progress always, even your mistakes. It was because of this that I decided to make a new game completely, a fresh reset on my progression and failures that I had throughout my previous attempts. For those of you who are somehow unaware of what this game actually is, I'll quickly explain. It's a game about a guy in a pot, and by only using a hammer and his brute strength, is trying to climb a mountain. That's it. Simple enough to understand, really. Day 1 begins. At the start, my control of the character is rusty. Getting used to controlling a man in a pot doesn't exactly seem like an easy task, but I did make it over the classic tree, the first obstacle of this mountain. Then the rocks, then the ore, the pipe, the rock face, and I made it to the biggest obstacle of the beginning area of the game, the elevator. It's a slanted, narrow, and vertical passageway lined with a few lanterns to use as platforms. For new players it is especially tough, as it's the first time where the movement of your hammer really matters. Within a few tries, though, I was triumphant. I made it through the construction site next, then the slide, the boxes, and the furniture. I was flying and thought, maybe this game was easier than I remember it being. That was until I reached the aptly named Orange Hell. Orange Hell has a simple enough premise and design. It contains a small table with a movable orange on top of it. Above you are a few connected slippery rocks that you have to push yourself up to using your hammer. Orange Hell was my stopping point. In all of the previous near 7 hours of gameplay, I did not make it through Orange Hell a single time. My first attempt at it this time around was no different. I failed. Immediately. After 30 minutes, I made it 4 times. My 5th attempt showed a bit more promise than the previous. I was able to make it up to the first rock, but no further than that. Attempt number 6 was even better than 5, making it up to the second one. It was around this point that I began fiddling with my sensitivity and DPI, something that I would continue to do during my climb, raising or lowering it depending on whether I needed power or precision. Attempt 9 was one of the most devastating losses up to that point. It was my first reset all the way back to the start of the game. The areas for this level of mistake are pretty uncommon, however, they are easily the biggest detriment to the player. Losing all of the progress that you made feels awful, especially if it took you hours to reach a particular section. After falling, I just sat there, reflecting. It wasn't just a mild annoyance to me, this mistake actually felt bad. It was the first of its kind, and not the last, unfortunately. 10 minutes later, and I was back, but to no avail. Attempt 11, directly afterwards, I decided on a new approach. Every other attempt I had tried going quickly. After all, I knew I needed power to get through the obstacle. But after plummeting to the start, I thought that maybe rashly rushing through it might not be the best strategy. This time around, I lowered my DPI, and I went slowly. And it was the furthest that I'd ever made it. I was just inches away from making it through Orange Hell. Attempts 12 through 15 followed a similar story. I took a break and came back to the game a few hours later, making it back to Orange Hell after a slight fall in just under 10 minutes. It was a strong attempt, but not strong enough, and I continued on. A few tries later, on attempt number 19, I made it through. I mean, it was exhausting, but I finally had a grasp on what to do, and I was confident that this was... on to the next. Attempt 24, I decided to slow it down even more than attempt 11, stopping myself on the rock, moving all the way to the side and pogo jumping to the end. I was remarkably close, something that I took note of but wouldn't fully implement until later for some reason. Throughout and in between all of these attempts, I was falling. A lot. It got to the point where I was frustrated with the obstacles that I had known how to overcome for quite some time at this point, and I was getting sloppy. That being said, I also was getting faster and more used to these obstacles as long as my mentality didn't suffer. I started to use techniques that would speed up the time it took for my next Orange Hell attempt. I ended the day with 29 attempts at Orange Hell alone, over 2 hours of playtime and no forward progress made. The two began the following evening on March 30th. Attempts 30 through 36 were relatively unimportant. They took 30 minutes, and I made no progress other than a slow crawl into insanity. Attempt 37, all things considered, looks just like another bad attempt, but it was when I was really deciding that the best way to play everything was by taking it excruciatingly slowly. So even though I ended up failing, I gained intelligence in what was needed to beat this section. On attempt 38, I did just that. It took me a full minute to eventually fall, but I was extremely close, even closer than attempt 19. I knew that this strategy was consistent as long as I got enough power from the final pogo jump. That was where changing my DPI came into play. Then, on attempt 39, I finally did it. I beat Orange Hell for the first time ever. In totality, it took me almost 10 hours of in-game time to beat it, and 2.5 from just the past 2 days alone. I was relieved. In the past, Orange Hell seemed impossible to pass. Now that I'd actually gone and done it, I could most likely get through it more consistently if I ended up falling back there. Onto the church. I did a pogo to pass the statue head, but then hit a wall with my hammer right after reaching the thumb and fell back to the slide. I played for a little while longer, but only managed to make it past Orange Hell one more time. At that point, I just made it to the roof, messed up the pogo to get past it, and ended day 2 shortly thereafter. I didn't end up picking the game back up until April 5th, where I played for hours but did not make it past Orange Hell a single time. The following day, April 6th, followed the exact same story. I think a good representation of my mental state was the entirety of April 7th, my 5th day of trying to conquer the mountain. I recorded and played for 3 minutes only, and in that time I made it to Orange Hell once. I did end up beating it, but I immediately fell after once I reached the church, and I stopped playing. I didn't play again until May 9th, which I'll get to a bit later. I think that by this point I was plainly exhausted. I wanted to beat this game so badly. I wanted to set a goal and actually beat it through hard work alone. I was questioning if it was actually worth it, if making a video on this would actually end up bringing entertainment to those that watched, and if beating it would even bring me the level of satisfaction that justified the sheer number of hours that I slaved over my computer making no progress. Many people would call getting over it rage bait, a game that solely exists to boost the ego of those that complete it and frustrate all of those that couldn't get past an obstacle and gave up on their journey. A contributing factor to this view is Bennett Foddy himself, the creator of the game and the man who speaks to you throughout the game periodically. Occasionally, he says things that may come off as taunting the player, usually after a big fall. On the very first fall the player makes, he points out that the player lost a lot of progress, that it's a real punch in the gut, as if the player themselves can't just see how they made a mistake and now have to redo a section. On some of the later falls, Bennett Foddy plays music. It may be distracting for some or frustrating for others. Eventually though, on the 44th fall the player has, he says he'll let them be for a little bit, and it isn't until they finally triumph over that obstacle that he begins to speak again, as if he's welcoming you back to the climb, and reigniting your ambition to conquer the mountain that he's created for you. I want to bring attention to something said by the Cursed Judge in his video called The Games We Forget. He points out that even though the game is described as a mountain, it's only really a mountain for a short while. The rest of the game serves as a mountain in the metaphorical sense, one that Bennett Foddy created, and he created it for you. As the player approaches the end of the game, his voice lines become softer, more personal and intimate. He wants you to beat his game. He wants you to conquer the mountain sitting before you, and he encourages you to do so. Day 6 begins on May 9th, almost a full month after my most recent day. Oh. I beat the game. In an hour and a half. To be honest, I'm extremely unsure as to how this actually happened. I came back to the game excited to finish it. It was the start of my finals week, and I'd finally be able to go home and start editing and recording a voiceover. This was the first time for me to sit down and actually get it done, and I did. The first 30 minutes went exactly like each of the first 2 resurgences of my playtime did. I was rusty, I made mistakes, and I fell. Quickly though, I made it past Orange Hell for the very final time. I made it up to the church and was startled by some bats before climbing up the next big rock, and I was pleasantly surprised by the voice of Bennett Foddy.
It feels like we're closer now, composer and climber, designer and user. You could have refused, but you didn't. There was something in you that was hidden, that chose to continue.
Finally, he was back. I felt elated to hear his voice again. Something about his absence made it feel almost lonely, like I was on the climb for no reason at all. I sat and listened to him because he was right. There was something within me that pushed me to continue, and now I was finally ready to take on the final section. I climbed the icy rock, went past the anvil, over the floating ice balls, and up the bucket all the way to the final danger, the ice wall. I find it important to note that next to the bucket is a snake with a sign that warns the players not to ride it. Before playing, I had known about this snake. There are dozens of clips online of people riding down its back to the dreaded beginning of the game. The snake always confused me, but at the same time I find it to be an incredible piece of design. Making it this far does not come without some level of mental anguish. Many players might hold a grudge or ill feelings towards the creator for making the game as difficult as it is. The snake is easy enough to avoid, especially if you take care in making the bucket jump properly. Some people, though, offer themselves up to the snake, as if they don't believe in the words of Bennett Foddy. It serves as a reminder that this is not just a physical game about making the correct jumps and moving your hammer the right way, but it's also a mental or psychological challenge, one where the player must maintain composure and problem-solving skills, as well as the will to persevere. The ice wall is the most mountain-like obstacle in the entire game. It is long, slippery, and steep, and one wrong input and the player will slide all the way back down to the bottom of the wall, if not further than that. Halfway through the wall, Bennett Foddy whispers in your ear.
Have you thought about who you are in this? Are you the man in the pot, Diogenes? Are you his hand? Are you the top of his hammer? I think not. Where your hand moves, the hammer may not follow, nor the man, nor the man's hand. In this you're his will, his intent, He embodied resolve in his uphill ascent.
At this point, you're so close to the end. One final push to ascension. The very top of the mountain is a radar tower. At this point of the game, the player has developed skills to easily make it to the top, so it doesn't really exist as a final barrier to entry or exit depending on how you look at it. It's merely a platform for you to propel yourself into the stars. A few short minutes later, and you will do just that. Bennett Foddy once again whispers in your ear, but this time for the final time.
I dedicate this game to you, the one who came this far. I give it to you with all my love.
Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy is not a game that sucks, nor is it a game that I suck at. It's a story of your own success, your own perseverance, your will, as long as you let it be. Sure, this game is frustrating and difficult, but so are many other aspects of our lives. This game is not just a congregation of assets combined together as a way to frustrate people, it's truly a journey that each person has the option to take on. I took on this challenge not for a video, not for an ego boost, but to prove to myself that I was capable of achieving something that I deemed impossible. Content creation feels equally unlikely. I find that the best way to close out this video is with my favorite quote from the game. Patience is the foundation of eternal peace. Make anger your enemy. Harm comes to those who know only victory and do not know defeat. Find fault with yourself and not with others. It is in falling short of your own goals that you will surpass those who exceed theirs. Tokugawa Ieyasu. Thank you. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content. If not, leave a comment telling me what I need to do better. Before you go, I would like to take this time to thank my friends who have accompanied me along my journey and impacted me in a positive way. This is by no means a comprehensive list, but the people listed here have specifically helped me, some of them in ways that they may not even know. Some of them I haven't spoken to in years, but I still appreciate them nonetheless and want them to know how much their friendship really means to me. Thank you for everything.